Part 1. The seasoned Commander Thalric stood in the war room of his massive dreadnought, the Unbroken Talon. His forearms moved gracefully across the holographic displays, each one showing a different battle he had won. 17 campaigns. 17 victories. He was considered the greatest military mind in the Galactic Coalition, and he knew it. His scales, dark green and scarred from decades of service, caught the blue light of the displays. Around him, junior officers from various species watched in respectful silence as he lectured them about proper warfare. War was an art, he told them. It required discipline, formation, calculated strikes, and above all, honor. When an enemy surrendered, you accepted it. When a battle was won, you treated prisoners with dignity. This was the way civilized species fought. War is not chaos, Thalric said, his deep voice filling the room. It is order imposed through superior strategy. The junior officers nodded. They had all heard stories of his brilliance, how he had broken the siege of Valdros with a single tactical maneuver, how he had negotiated the surrender of the Kelton Rebellion without firing a shot. Thalric was not just a warrior, he was a legend. A communication signal interrupted his lecture. The holographic display shifted to show the seal of the Galactic Coalition High Command. Thalric dismissed his officers and accepted the transmission. The face of Admiral Varesh appeared, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Commander Thalric, we have a situation. The Crevan swarm has begun expanding into Coalition space. We need you to lead a joint fleet operation to stop them. Thalric nodded. The Crevens were insectoids, aggressive but predictable. I will need my usual command structure and the 5th Battle Group. You will have them, Varesh said, then hesitated. There is one more thing. Humanity has requested to join the operation. Thalric felt his secondary set of eyes narrow. Humanity, the newest species in the Coalition. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 10 years ago. Their technology was primitive compared to most Coalition members. Their ships were basic, their weapons outdated. He had read the reports. Humanity was eager to prove themselves, but they were untested in real galactic warfare. Are they ready for this? Thalric asked. The Coalition Council believes it is time to see what they can do. Consider it a training exercise for them. Thalric agreed, though he was not pleased. Babysitting primitive species was not his preference, but orders were orders. 3 days later, the human ship arrived at the Coalition staging area. The destroyer Defiant Hope was small compared to the other vessels in the fleet. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, clearly showing various repair jobs. The design was blocky and unrefined. Thalric could see weapons mounted in configurations that violated standard military doctrine. When Captain Doyen and his crew boarded the Unbroken Talon, Thalric tried to hide his disappointment. The human captain was young, wearing a simple uniform with minimal decoration. He smiled too much. His crew seemed relaxed, almost casual. Lieutenant Hana, a sharp-eyed woman who served as tactical officer, carried a small datapad and kept glancing at everything with obvious curiosity. Chief Engineer Minho looked like he wanted to take apart every system on the ship just to see how it worked. Commander Thalric, Doyen said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. It's an honor to serve with you. We've heard amazing things about your tactical abilities. Thalric touched the human's hand briefly, finding the gesture strange. Captain Doyen, I trust your ship is prepared for combat? As ready as we can make her, Doyen replied cheerfully. The briefing began an hour later. Thalric presented his strategy to the assembled Coalition commanders. It was a standard 3-pronged assault. The fleet would divide into 3 groups, approaching the Crevan position from different angles. The center group would draw the enemy's attention, while the flanking groups struck from the sides. Overwhelming firepower applied in coordinated fashion. Simple, effective, proven. Questions? Thalric asked when he finished. Doyen raised his hand. What about their communication networks? If we disrupt those first, they won't be able to coordinate their defense. We do not target infrastructure in opening strikes, Thalric explained patiently. That is considered improper by Coalition warfare standards. We engage military targets only. But their communication is a military target, Doyen said, looking confused. It is also civilian infrastructure. We maintain certain principles in warfare, Captain. Doyen glanced at Hana, who shrugged. Understood, Commander. What about psychological operations? Have we analyzed their fear responses there? We do not employ psychological warfare. Thalrix interrupted, his voice harder now. We are not barbarians. We fight with honor. The other coalition commanders exchanged amused glances. Everyone knew humans were new to this. They would learn. Doyen sat back, but Thalrix noticed the human was still studying the tactical display with an intensity that seemed unusual. Throughout the rest of the briefing, the human captain remained quiet, but his eyes never stopped moving, analyzing everything. The fleet moved into position near the Helios Nebula, where Coalition intelligence had located a major Kreven staging ground. Thalrix reviewed his forces one final time. 300 ships all properly positioned. The Krevens had perhaps 200 vessels, mostly smaller raiders. The odds were in the Coalition's favor. All ships, prepare for engagement, Thalrix ordered. Execute Formation Alpha 7. Fire on my command. The fleet moved as one, a beautiful display of coordinated military power. The three groups approached the Kreven position exactly as planned. Thalrix felt the familiar calm that came with battle. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Then the Krevens responded. They did not form defensive lines as expected. Instead, they swarmed forward in a chaotic mass, their ships moving in seemingly random patterns. It was crude, but effective. The swarm, divided, flowing around the Coalition's carefully planned formations like water around rocks. Adjust formation, Thalrix ordered. Tighten defensive spacing. But the Krevens were already on the flanks, their smaller ships darting between the larger Coalition vessels. Several ships reported hull breaches. The neat, orderly battle Thalrix had planned was becoming complicated. Sir, multiple contacts breaking through the left flank, an officer reported. Thalrix assessed the situation quickly. They were still winning, but casualties were higher than predicted. The Krevens fought with no discipline, no strategy, just aggressive swarming. It was frustrating but manageable. Then his sensors detected something unexpected. The Defiant Hope was moving. Without orders, without permission. The human ship broke from its assigned position in the rear support group and accelerated directly toward the center of the Kreven swarm. Captain Doyen returned to formation immediately. Thalrix commanded over the communication channel. No response. The human destroyer dove into the thickest part of the enemy formation, Kreven ships surrounding it from all sides. Thalrix watched in disbelief. It was suicide. The humans were going to be torn apart. Defiant Hope, acknowledge. Thalrix called again. The communication channel crackled, and Lieutenant Hana's voice came through, calm and professional. Activating psychological warfare protocols. Recommend all Coalition ships increase distance by 5,000 meters. What are you doing? Thalrix demanded. But the humans did not answer. Their ship continued its impossible dive into the heart of the enemy swarm, and Thalrix could only watch, certain he was about to witness humanity's first and last battle in the Galactic War. Thalrix gripped the edge of his command console as he watched the human ship disappear into the swarm of Kreven vessels. Every instinct told him Doyen had just killed himself and his crew. No ship could survive in that chaos. The Krevens would tear them apart within seconds. But seconds passed and the Defiant Hope was still moving. The human destroyer twisted and turned through the enemy formation with movements that should have been impossible. Sharp turns at full speed, sudden acceleration followed by equally sudden stops. The ship moved like a living creature, not like a proper military vessel following standard navigation protocols. Sir, the human ship is broadcasting something, his communication officer reported. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse pattern. Jam it, Thalrix ordered. They could be revealing our positions to the enemy. No, sir, the pulses are not carrying tactical data. They appear to be sounds, images. I cannot identify the content. Thalrix pulled up the sensor data on his display. The humans were broadcasting on dozens of frequencies simultaneously, flooding the space around them with electromagnetic noise. What was the purpose? It made no tactical sense. Then something strange happened. The Crevan ships closest to the Defiant Hope began moving erratically. Their tight attack formations broke apart. Some ships collided with each other. Others simply stopped moving, as if their pilots had abandoned their controls. "What is happening?" Thalrix demanded. Hana's voice came through the communication channel again, still impossibly calm. The Crevans communicate primarily through electromagnetic frequencies and pheromone signals. We analyzed their biology, found some interesting things in their evolutionary history. Turns out they evolved on a planet with some very nasty predators. "Explain," Thalrix said. "We are broadcasting sounds and frequencies from those predators. The Crevans are experiencing what humans call a panic response. It is biological. They cannot help it." Thalrix felt his blood run cold. The humans were not attacking the Crevan ships. They were attacking the Crevan minds. "That is psychological warfare," Thalrix said. "That violates Coalition protocols." "Does it?" Doyen's voice joined the channel now. "We are not torturing anyone. We are just playing sounds. If the Crevans have a problem with certain frequencies, that seems like a weakness in their biology, not a war crime on our part." Before Thalrix could respond, more chaos erupted in the Crevan formation. Dozens of bright contacts appeared on the tactical display, spreading through the enemy ranks like a disease. "Sir, the Crevans are firing on each other," an officer shouted. Thalrix zoomed in on the sensor data. The Crevan swarm was tearing itself apart. Ships that had been working together moments ago were now attacking each other with desperate fury. "Minho here," the human engineer's voice came through. "Hope you don't mind, but we modified a few dozen torpedo casings before the battle. Filled them with reflective chaff that mimics Crevan queen pheromone signatures. Just launched them into the swarm." "You did what?" Thalrix could barely comprehend what he was hearing. "The Cravens operate on a hive structure," Hana explained, as if she were teaching a class instead of in the middle of combat. "Queens are the center of their society. We just created thousands of false queen signals. The swarm is trying to protect all of them at once. They cannot tell which signals are real." Thalrix watched his tactical display in stunned silence. The Crevan formation had completely collapsed. Ships were fleeing in every direction. Others were attacking anything nearby that might be a threat to the false queen signals. The disciplined swarm had become a mob of confused, terrified individuals. "All Coalition ships advance," Thalrix heard himself order. Target enemy vessels attempting to regroup. The Coalition fleet moved forward. The battle that should have been difficult was now a simple cleanup operation. Crevan ships that tried to reform were easily destroyed or forced to retreat. Within 20 minutes, the entire enemy force had either fled or been eliminated. Coalition casualties, minimal. 3 ships with moderate damage, no losses. Crevan casualties, catastrophic. More than half their ships destroyed. The rest scattered across the sector. When the battle ended, Thalrix sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. Around him, his crew celebrated the victory. But Thalrix felt no joy, only a cold, creeping unease that he could not name. He called for a meeting with Captain Doyen. The human arrived in Thalrix's private quarters an hour later, still wearing his combat uniform. He looked tired but satisfied. Thalrix poured 2 glasses of Viridian wine, a gesture of respect between warriors, and handed one to Doyen. "That was effective," Thalrix said carefully. "Thank you, Commander. Your tactical positioning made it possible. We just added a little chaos to the mix." "A little chaos." Thalrix tasted the words. "You destroyed their ability to think, turned them against each other, and made them fear shadows. That is not warfare. That is something else." Doyen took a sip of the wine and sat down without being invited. The casual disrespect would have angered Thalrix days ago. Now he barely noticed. "With respect, Commander, that is warfare. It is just not the kind you are used to." "Explain." Doyen leaned forward. "You fight with honor, with formations and protocols. You treat war like a structured competition with rules. That works fine when everyone agrees to the same rules. But what happens when your enemy does not care about honor, when they just want to kill you and take your worlds? Then we defeat them with superior strategy and firepower," Thalrix said. "And how many of your people die in the process?" Doyen asked. "How many ships? How many soldiers? All because you refused to use tools that could end the fight faster with fewer casualties?" Thalrix wanted to argue, but the human's words struck something true. In every battle he had fought, casualties had been acceptable. Expected even. Losses were part of war. But what if they did not have to be? What you did today, Thalric said slowly. The psychological attacks. The deception. This is normal for humans? Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history, Doyen said. Thousands of years of constant warfare. We learned early that the side willing to fight smarter, not harder, usually wins. We study our enemies, find their weaknesses, psychological, biological, technological. Then we exploit those weaknesses without mercy. That is dishonorable. Honor is a luxury, Doyen said, and his voice was harder now. Honor is what you talk about when you can afford to lose. Humans learned a long time ago that we cannot afford to lose, so we fight to win always. Thalric drained his glass. Show me. Doyen pulled out a small data tablet and handed it to Thalric. This is human history, not the pretty version we tell at diplomatic meetings. The real version. Thalric began reading. What he saw made his scales crawl. Thousands of years of warfare. Empires rising and falling. Weapons that killed millions. Something called the World Wars, where humans slaughtered each other with industrial efficiency. Nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Genocide. Chemical warfare. Biological plagues unleashed deliberately on civilian populations. Humans had been killing each other in every way imaginable since before they had developed space travel. They had refined murder into a science. We are not proud of this history, Doyen said quietly. But we learned from it. We learned what works, what does not, and most importantly, we learned what happens when you remove all limits from warfare. And yet you still use these methods, Thalric said. We use what we need to. Nothing more. Today we could have used lethal biological weapons against the Cravens. We have them. But we chose fear instead. Temporary confusion instead of permanent death. We won the battle, and most of the Cravens will live to remember why they should not fight us again. Thalric set down the tablet. His mind was reeling. Everything he thought he knew about warfare felt suddenly inadequate. Like a child's understanding of adult matters. A priority alert interrupted his thoughts. His communication officer appeared on the holographic display looking frightened. Sir, Coalition intelligence has detected a massive Creven fleet assembling near the Vortex expanse. Estimates show 5 times our current numbers. They are preparing a counterattack. Thalric felt his heart sink. 5 to 1 odds. They would need massive reinforcements. Months to prepare proper defenses. He looked at Doyen, expecting to see concern. Instead, the human was smiling. Good, Doyen said. Now we can really show you what humans do. The Coalition War Council gathered aboard the Unbroken Talon to discuss the Creven threat. Thalric stood before a holographic display showing the enemy fleet. 2,000 ships all converging on Coalition space. The mood in the room was grim. We need to request reinforcements from the core worlds, Admiral Varesh said. With our current numbers, we cannot win a direct engagement. Reinforcements will take weeks to arrive, another commander pointed out. The Cravens will reach our colonies before then. Thalric studied the display in silence. Every conventional strategy led to the same conclusion. They needed more ships, more time, or both. Neither option was available. What if we do not fight them directly? Doyen's voice cut through the discussion. All eyes turned to the human captain. He stood near the back of the room, looking relaxed despite the crisis. Explain, Thalric said. Doyen walked to the holographic display and gestured at the Creven staging ground, a massive asteroid that had been converted into a military base. They are gathering here, preparing their attack. Their entire fleet is concentrated in one location. That is a weakness. It is also heavily defended, Varesh said. We would need triple our current forces to assault that position. We do not assault it, Doyen said. We infiltrate it. The room fell silent. Then several commanders began talking at once, their voices rising in protest. Infiltration, sabotage. These were not tactics used by honorable military forces. Thalric raised a hand for silence. Continue, Captain. We take a captured Creven vessel, load it with a small strike team, and go in quietly. Once inside, we sabotage their operations from within, destroy supply lines, corrupt their computer systems, spread fear and confusion. By the time they realize what is happening, their fleet will be crippled. That is espionage, Admiral Varesh said, his tentacles writhing in agitation. That is terrorism. We are a military force, not assassins in the dark. Call it what you want, Doyen said. But it will work, and it will save thousands of Coalition lives. The council erupted in argument. Half the commanders found the idea offensive. The other half saw the practical value but feared the political consequences. Using such underhanded tactics could damage the coalition's reputation. Thalrix listened to both sides, then made his decision. Captain Doyen, you will lead this operation. I will assign you a small strike force of volunteers. If anyone objects to these methods, they are not required to participate. He expected resistance. Instead, volunteers stepped forward immediately. Not just humans, but members of other species as well. Young officers who saw the logic in Doyen's plan. Older veterans who were tired of watching their comrades die in honorable but costly battles. Among the volunteers was Ji-Wan, a human Marine Corps officer known for her expertise in close combat. And Hyong, a combat pilot whose kill count made even experienced coalition warriors nervous. 3 days later, the strike team departed in a captured Kravan vessel. Thalrix had decided to join them. If the coalition was going to use these methods, he needed to understand them firsthand. The journey to the Kravan staging ground took 2 days. Thalrix spent the time observing the humans as they prepared. They moved with quiet efficiency, checking equipment, reviewing intelligence, practicing combat drills. But what struck him most was how they talked about the mission. Remember, make it look like internal problems, Ji-Wan told her team. We want them thinking their own people are sabotaging them, not that we are here. And if we run into civilians? A young coalition soldier asked. Avoid them if possible, Ji-Wan said. Detain them if necessary, but no unnecessary casualties. We are not here to murder people. We are here to stop a war. Thalrix found the distinction strange. The humans were planning to infiltrate an enemy base, sabotage critical systems, and spread chaos. But they drew clear lines about what they would and would not do. It was brutality with rules, efficiency with ethics. They reached the asteroid base without incident. The captured Kravan vessel's identification codes worked perfectly, and they docked at a maintenance bay without raising suspicion. What followed was a masterclass in covert operations that Thalrix had never imagined. Ji-Wan led teams through the base's corridors using tactics refined over centuries of human naval warfare. They moved in small groups, fast and quiet. When they encountered Kravan patrols, they used stun weapons and sedatives. Within an hour, they had reached the base's main computer core. Minho, the human engineer, went to work. His fingers danced across a portable terminal as he introduced a virus into the Kravan network. Not a weapon. A mistake. The virus made random errors in logistics calculations. Supply shipments would go to wrong locations. Maintenance schedules would be delayed. Nothing catastrophic by itself, but together, these small problems would cripple the fleet's readiness. How long until they notice? Thalrix asked. Days, maybe weeks, Minho said, not looking up from his work. The virus disguises itself as normal system glitches. By the time they realize it is deliberate, the damage will be done. In another section of the base, Yong was uploading new programming to the Kravan fighter craft. Small modifications to their navigation systems, subtle changes that would make the ships respond just a little bit slower, turn just a little bit wider. In combat, these tiny differences would be fatal. You are sabotaging their weapons without destroying them, Thalrix observed. Destruction is easy to detect, Yong said. This way, they will not know anything is wrong until they try to use these ships in battle, and by then it will be too late. The strike team moved through the base like ghosts, leaving chaos in their wake. They planted false evidence suggesting internal corruption. They released misleading communications that would make different Kravan factions suspicious of each other. They created problems that would take weeks to solve. Then they discovered something that changed everything. Deep in the base's intelligence center, Doyen found classified Kravan documents. Plans for biological weapons. Engineered plagues designed to target specific coalition species. The Kravans were not just planning to attack military targets. They intended to commit genocide. Doyen brought the information to Thalrix. We need to do something about this. What can we do? Thalrix asked. Destroying the base would alert the entire fleet. We do not destroy it, Doyen said. We make them afraid of their own weapons. He called for Dr. Yunji, the human medical officer on the team. She was young, barely 30 years old, but her eyes held the same intensity that Thalrix had seen in all the humans. Can you create a non-lethal pathogen? Doyen asked her. Something that will incapacitate Kravans but not kill them? Yunji studied the Kravan biological data for several hours. Then she nodded. Yes, a modified version of their own immune response. It will cause temporary paralysis but no permanent damage. I can synthesize it using materials from their own medical bay. Do it, Doyen ordered. Thalrix grabbed the human captain's arm. You are talking about biological warfare. This is exactly what we are trying to stop the Krevans from doing. Doyen met his eyes. The Krevans were going to use their bioweapons without hesitation. Against civilians. Against children. We are using a non-lethal response to show them why they should never go down this path. There is a difference. Is there? Thalrix challenged. Or are you just becoming the monsters you claim to fight? Maybe, Doyen admitted. But I would rather become a monster temporarily than let the real monsters win permanently. When this is over, history can judge us. Right now, we need to survive. Dr. Yunji completed her work. The pathogen was released into the base's life support system. Within hours, thousands of Krevans were collapsing, their bodies temporarily paralyzed but alive. The base descended into chaos as healthy Krevans tried to understand what was happening. The strike team used the confusion to escape. They fought their way back to their ship, stunning or avoiding Krevan security forces. G1 held the rear guard, her movements precise and deadly when necessary but always controlled. She could have killed dozens. Instead, she disabled them. As they fled the base, Young piloted their ship through the assembling Krevan fleet. Ships tried to pursue them, but the modifications he had made earlier caused several crashes and collisions. The fleet was in disarray. They made it back to Coalition space 3 days later. Exhausted, battered, but alive. Thalrix expected to feel victorious. Instead, he felt hollow. They had won, saved countless lives, prevented a genocidal attack, but the methods still troubled him. Then a new crisis emerged. A hierarchy judgeship appeared at the edge of Coalition space, its sensors having detected the biological weapon use. The ancient empire that enforced civilized warfare laws had come to investigate. Thalrix and Doyen were summoned to answer for war crimes. The galaxy was about to judge humanity's methods, and Thalrix realized he would have to defend tactics he still did not fully understand. The hierarchy cathedral ship Eternal Judgment was unlike anything Thalrix had ever seen. It was not built for war. It was built to inspire awe and fear. The vessel was enormous, covered in crystalline structures that glowed with inner light. Inside, everything was white and gold, sterile and perfect. Thalrix and Doyen walked through corridors filled with energy beings, creatures that had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. The hierarchy considered themselves the moral guardians of the galaxy. They had established the rules of civilized warfare, and they enforced those rules with absolute authority. They were led into a vast chamber where 3 arbiters waited. The lead arbiter, Luneth, appeared as a being of pure golden light in roughly humanoid shape. When it spoke, its voice resonated directly in Thalrix's mind. Commander Thalrix, Captain Doyen, you stand accused of violating galactic warfare conventions, specifically the use of biological weapons, psychological torture, and cyber warfare against the Krevan swarm. How do you plead? Doyen spoke before Thalrix could. We do not deny using those methods. The chamber filled with whispers. Beings from dozens of species watched from elevated platforms, all of them shocked by the humans' casual admission. You confess? Luneth asked, surprise evident even through its telepathic voice. We used psychological operations, cyber attacks, and a non-lethal biological agent, Doyen said calmly. All of these actions were necessary to prevent a much larger catastrophe. Necessity does not justify violating sacred laws, Luneth replied. These rules exist to prevent warfare from descending into barbarity. To preserve civilization itself, do they? Doyen challenged. Or do they exist to keep warfare comfortable for species who can afford to fight by the rules? The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several arbiters moved forward, their energy forms pulsing with rage. But Luneth raised a hand for silence. Explain yourself, human. Doyen pulled up holographic displays showing the Krevan bioweapon research. The Krevans were developing plagues to commit genocide against coalition species. Civilian populations, children. They had no intention of following your rules. So tell me, what good are rules that only the honorable follow? Then you should have brought this evidence to us, Luneth said. We would have intervened. Would you? Doyen asked. How long would that have taken? Days, weeks. How many people would have died while you deliberated? How many worlds would have burned while you debated the proper response? Better that some die with honor than all survive through dishonor, Luneth declared. Thalrix had remained silent until now, but those words ignited something in him. He stepped forward. "I used to believe that," he said. "I have fought 17 campaigns following every rule of honorable warfare. I lost soldiers in every battle because I refused to use tactics that might have saved them. I thought that was the price of civilization." "It is," Luneth said. "No," Thalrix continued. "It is the price of comfort. Following rules makes us feel good about ourselves, makes us believe we are better than our enemies. But what Captain Doyen showed me is that there is a difference between honor and effectiveness, between feeling righteous and actually protecting the innocent." "You defend their methods?" another arbiter asked in disbelief. "I defend their results," Thalrix said. "The humans stopped a genocidal attack with minimal casualties. The Crevan bioweapon facility was neutralized. Most importantly, the Crevans themselves are alive to learn from this experience. If we had followed your rules and fought conventionally, thousands would be dead on both sides." Luneth turned its attention back to Doyen. "You speak of rules as if they are obstacles, but without rules, warfare becomes extinction, genocide, the complete destruction of civilizations." "We agree," Doyen said, and his response clearly surprised the arbiters. "Humans learned this lesson the hard way." He gestured, and holographic images filled the chamber. Human history played out before the assembled witnesses. Wars, millions dead, entire cities destroyed, nuclear weapons, chemical attacks, biological plagues. "This is what unlimited warfare looks like," Doyen said quietly. "This is what happens when you remove all restraints. My species nearly destroyed itself learning this lesson. We killed each other with every weapon we could imagine, and then when we realized what we had become, we created rules." More images appeared. The Geneva Conventions, international laws, treaties limiting certain weapons, humanitarian protections. "We wrote down every mistake," Doyen continued. "Every horror. Every line that should never be crossed. Not because we did not know how to cross those lines, but because we knew exactly what happened when we did." Lieutenant Hanna stepped forward. "The biological agent we used on the Crevan base was specifically designed to be non-lethal. We could have killed everyone there. The Crevans would have. But we chose restraint because we understand what Dr. Yunji created was dangerous even in the right hands." "Restraint?" Luneth's voice was sharp. "You paralyze thousands of beings without consent. How is that restraint?" "Because they are alive," Dr. Yunji said, speaking for the first time. "Every single Crevan we affected will recover fully within days. No permanent damage, no deaths. Compare that to what would have happened if we had fought a conventional battle. How many would have died then? How many coalition soldiers? How many Crevan fighters?" The chamber fell silent as the beings present considered her words. "The humans are asking us to accept that brutal efficiency is preferable to honorable casualties," one arbiter said. "This is a fundamental challenge to everything the hierarchy stands for. What we are asking," Doyen said, "is for you to recognize that the galaxy has changed. There are enemies out there who will not follow your rules. The Crevans prove that, and there will be others. You can either hold to traditions that get people killed, or you can adapt to reality." "Adapt by becoming monsters ourselves?" Luneth asked. "By becoming effective," Doyen corrected. "Monsters have no limits, we do. Every human method comes with built-in restrictions. We study the enemy to find weaknesses, but we do not target civilians. We use psychological operations, but we do not torture. We employ cyber warfare, but we have protocols for what we will and will not do. We are brutal when necessary, but we never forget why we are fighting." Thalrix watched Luneth carefully. The ancient being was clearly struggling with these concepts. The hierarchy had existed for millions of years, enforcing their vision of civilized warfare. Now a species barely 1,000 years old was challenging everything they believed. Before Luneth could render judgment, an urgent transmission interrupted the proceedings. A hierarchy intelligence officer appeared, its form flickering with distress. "The Crevan fleet has moved," it reported. "But not toward coalition space. They are heading for hierarchy territory." The chamber erupted in chaos. Luneth immediately demanded more information. "The Crevans have abandoned coalition warfare doctrine entirely," the intelligence officer explained. "They observed human tactics and decided to adopt them, but without human restraint. They are using biological weapons, targeting civilian infrastructure, deploying psychological warfare without limits. They learned from what the humans did, but they learned the wrong lessons. Luneth turned back to Doyen. You did this. You showed them these methods. No, Doyen said firmly. We showed them that conventional tactics are not always sufficient. But the Krevans are doing what we specifically avoided. They removed all limits. They chose to become the monsters we refused to be. And now they threaten us, Luneth said bitterly. Yes, which means you have a choice to make. Punish us for using effective tactics with restraint, or accept that sometimes the galaxy needs warriors who understand both how to fight brutally and when to stop. The arbiters conferred privately for several minutes. When they returned, Luneth addressed the chamber. We offer humanity a compromise. You will join our peacekeeping forces as specialists in what you call asymmetric warfare. You will teach coalition forces your methods under supervision. In exchange, you must also teach them your limits. The galaxy must learn not just how humans fight, but why you choose to fight the way you do. Doyen nodded. We accept. But on one condition, you also update your warfare conventions to reflect reality. Rules that only work when everyone follows them are not rules. They are wishes. Agreed, Luneth said reluctantly. As the proceedings ended, a final message arrived. The Kraven forces had allied with the Tavaric Dominion, a powerful empire that rivaled the coalition. The Tavaric had studied human tactics from intercepted transmissions and were preparing for a massive offensive. War was no longer regional. It was about to consume the entire galaxy, and the enemy had learned humanity's methods without learning humanity's wisdom. Thalrix looked at Doyen as they left the chamber. What have we done? We showed the galaxy what was possible, Doyen said. Now we have to show them what is right. 3 months had passed since the hierarchy trial, 3 months of constant warfare across the galaxy. Thalrix stood in the command center of his flagship, but it barely resembled the ship he had once commanded. Human engineers had retrofitted the unbroken Talon with stealth technology, electronic warfare systems, and adaptive combat protocols. The ship could now fight in ways that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The galaxy was burning. The Krevan-Tavaric alliance had adopted human asymmetric warfare tactics with terrifying efficiency. But they had removed all restraints. Biological weapons destroyed entire colonies. Cyber attacks crashed life support systems on civilian stations. Psychological warfare drove populations to madness. Entire star systems had gone dark, their fates unknown. The coalition was losing. Status report, Thalrix ordered. His tactical officer, now a human named Seonho who specialized in large-scale strategic operations, pulled up the latest intelligence. The Tavaric have taken the Outer Rim territories. They are moving toward the core worlds. If we do not stop them soon, half the coalition will be under their control. Thalrix studied the display. The Tavaric were using every tactic humans had demonstrated, but with none of the ethical boundaries. They fought like humans might have fought thousands of years ago, before they learned restraint. Where is Admiral Doyen? Thalrix asked. His fleet is engaging Tavaric forces near the Crimson Nebula, Seonho replied. Reports indicate heavy casualties on both sides. Thalrix felt his heart sink. Doyen had been promoted to admiral after the hierarchy trial, leading humanity's expeditionary fleet. Hana now commanded her own destroyer. Minho directed an entire fleet of automated repair vessels. Ji-won led a battalion of special forces. Hyung commanded a carrier wing. All of them were fighting desperately to stop the monster they had helped create. A priority transmission arrived from Coalition High Command. The hierarchy was convening an emergency council. They were considering using planet-killing weapons against Tavaric worlds, the ultimate violation of every rule they had ever established. Thalrix felt sick. This was what happened when rules were abandoned entirely, both sides descending into total war. He opened a secure channel to Doyen. The human admiral appeared on the holographic display, his face streaked with ash and blood. Commander, Doyen greeted him. I assume you heard about the hierarchy's plan? It is madness, Thalrix said. If they use those weapons, this becomes a war of extinction. Agreed. Which is why we need to end this before they make that decision. I have an idea, but I need your support. 2 days later, the largest coalition war council in history assembled. Representatives from hundreds of worlds, the hierarchy arbiters and military commanders from every species. The mood was grim. Everyone knew that without drastic action, the war would spiral into galactic genocide. Luneth, the lead hierarchy arbiter, spoke first. The Tivaric Dominion has proven that limited warfare is no longer viable. They respect no laws, acknowledge no boundaries. We must respond with overwhelming force. We propose using dimensional collapse weapons against their core systems. The chamber fell silent. Dimensional collapse weapons did not just destroy worlds. They erased them from existence, leaving nothing but voids in spacetime. How many lives would that cost? Someone asked. 12 billion on the first 3 targets, Luneth admitted. But it would force the Tivaric to surrender. End the war quickly. Or provoke them to use similar weapons against us, another commander pointed out. Doyen stood. There is another option. All attention turned to the human admiral. The Tivaric adopted our tactics, Doyen said. They learned to fight like humans. But they do not understand the philosophy behind those tactics. They are mimicking us without comprehension. That is a weakness we can exploit. Explain, Luneth demanded. Doyen activated a holographic display showing the Tivaric command structure. They have centralized their operations. One supreme commander controlling all forces. Very efficient but also vulnerable. The Tivaric copied human tactics but kept their traditional command hierarchy. That is their mistake. Siono stepped forward. We propose a 3-stage operation. First, misdirection. We feed false intelligence through compromised channels, making the Tivaric commit forces to the wrong locations. Second, decapitation. We target their leadership with precision strikes, not to kill them, but to capture them. And third, revelation. Revelation? Thalrix asked. G1 appeared on the display from her forward position. We have been monitoring Tivaric internal communications. Their leadership has been lying to their own people. The alliance with the Cravens was never equal. The Tivaric have been planning to betray them once the coalition falls. They have also been using bioweapons on their own colonies to maintain control. We expose these lies, Doyen said. Turn the alliance against itself. Make the Tivaric Dominion collapse from within. That is information warfare, one of the arbiters said. Propaganda. It is the truth, Hana interjected. We are not making anything up. We are just revealing what the Tivaric leaders have been hiding. If their people and allies know what is really happening, they will turn against their leaders. Luneth considered this for a long moment. And if this plan fails? Then you can use your dimensional weapons, Doyen said bluntly. But give us a chance to end this without genocide. The council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed. Humanity would have one chance to prove their methods could win without destroying civilizations. The operation began immediately. Hyung's carrier wings performed impossible feinting, maneuvers across dozens of systems, drawing Tivaric fleets into traps. His pilots flew with precision that seemed supernatural, luring enemy ships into gravity wells and asteroid fields where coalition forces waited. Minho's automated vessels, disguised as simple logistics ships, infiltrated Tivaric networks. They did not attack directly. Instead, they gathered evidence. Communications between Tivaric leaders discussing their betrayal of the Crevens, orders to use bioweapons on their own people, financial records showing corruption at the highest levels. Dr. Yunji worked with Creven defectors, offering them the cure for the paralysis agent humans had used months ago. It was a gesture of peace, proof that humans could show mercy. Many Crevens began questioning why they were allied with the Tivaric at all. G1 Special Forces teams moved through Tivaric territory like ghosts. They did not destroy. They captured. Key commanders were taken alive, interrogated using psychological techniques that left no physical marks but extracted crucial intelligence. And through it all, Doyen coordinated the largest information warfare campaign in galactic history. Every piece of evidence Minho's vessels gathered was carefully verified, then broadcast across all frequencies. The truth about Tivaric leadership flooded their territory. The effect was devastating. Tivaric fleet commanders, horrified by their leaders' plans, began questioning their orders. Some refused to fight. Others actively helped coalition forces, providing intelligence and safe passage. The Crevens, realizing they had been manipulated from the beginning, withdrew their forces. Their queen sent a message directly to Doyen. You defeated us with fear. You could have killed us with plague. Instead, you showed mercy and revealed truth. We will not fight beside those who value us less than you did. Within 2 weeks, the Tivaric Dominion was fracturing from within. The final confrontation came at the Tivaric capital system. Instead of attacking with the full coalition fleet, Doyen took a small force directly to their homeworld. It was a calculated risk, a demonstration. They did not fire a single shot. Instead, they broadcast everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every crime the Tavaric leadership had committed against their own people. The broadcast went out on every channel in every language, impossible to block or censor. The Tavaric people rose up against their leaders. The fleet commanders who had trusted the coalition's information refused orders to fire on civilian protests. Within days, the Tavaric government collapsed. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a revolution. In the aftermath, Thalrix and Doyen met one final time aboard the new coalition flagship, watching reconstruction efforts across formerly contested systems. "I believed I knew war," Thalrix said quietly. "I thought it was about formations, firepower, honor. I was wrong. War is about people," Doyen said. "Understanding them, predicting them, sometimes becoming what you need to be to protect them. But the most important part is knowing when to stop." "The Tavaric learned your tactics but not your wisdom," Thalrix observed. "They became the monsters you refused to be." "Because tactics without ethics are just tools of destruction," Doyen replied. "We spent thousands of years learning that lesson. Every war, every atrocity, every mistake. We wrote it all down so we would remember. And now you share those lessons with the galaxy," Thalrix said. "We have to. Because the alternative is watching everyone else make the same mistakes we did. The galaxy needs to understand that brutal efficiency is not the same as cruelty. That psychological warfare is not the same as torture. That winning is not the same as destroying." Thalrix gestured at the fleet around them. Human vessels integrated seamlessly with ships from dozens of species. "You changed everything. The coalition will never fight the same way again." "Good," Doyen said. "But we also need to make sure they remember